Shalom, everybody. I hope everybody is blessed. I hope you're doing great today, and we have a good one today. We're in part 2 of Genesis chapter 26, part 2 of Genesis chapter 26, and we'll be looking at some things, once again, as we can apply to our lives. As it is written, the law is spiritual. The law is spiritual. So we're going to look at some applications that we find in the book of Bereshith or Genesis, and we're going to see these things in what is called the New Testament, or the writings of the apostles and things of that nature, and the gospels. So let's get right into it. Like, share, and subscribe that others may hear our Father's words. So in Genesis 26, we stopped at verse 5, and I'll read from verse 6 through 12 and 13. The big emphasis will be on verse 12 and 13. But starting in verse 6, in Genesis chapter 26, it says, "And Isaac dwelt in Gerar, and the men of the place asked him of his wife, and he said, She is my sister. For he feared to say, She is my wife, lest, said he, the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon. And it came to pass, when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out at a window and saw, and behold, Isaac was sporting with Rebekah, his wife. And Abimelech called Isaac and said, Behold, of a surety, she is thy wife. And how saidest thou, She is my sister? And Isaac said unto him, Because I said, Lest I die for her. And Abimelech said, What is this thou hast done unto us? One of the people might lightly have lied with thy wife, and thou shouldest have brought guiltiness upon us. And Abimelech charged all his people, saying, He that toucheth this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. Then Isaac sold in that land, and received the same year 100-fold. And Yah blessed him, and the man waxed great, and went forward, and grew until he became very great." All right. So even in the first few verses, Isaac did the same thing that Abraham did. He told Abimelech that this was my sister, so that they wouldn't kill him. You know, it's kind of a little bit of fear there, fearing for his life. He didn't want to die, so he said, She is my sister. Because he said, the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon. So he did similarly the same thing that Abraham did in this instant. But as we go into verse 12 and 13, we're going to hone in on this, because this will be the majority of the study. Verse 12 and 13, looking at this spiritually, it says, Then Isaac sowed in that land, and received the same year 100-fold. And Yah blessed him. And the man waxed great, and went forward, and grew until he became very great. Okay, so we see this, that he sowed in the land. And we know this is a physical connotation, that Isaac sowed in the land, that he was fruitful in the land. He got crop. He got fruit, or whatever, grain, wheat, whatever it may be that he grew. But it says that he sowed in the land. So there was seed, okay, to germinate, that it may bring forth fruit, as we see in Genesis chapter 1. So Isaac sowed in that land, and received the same year 100-fold. And Yah blessed him, and the man waxed great, and went forward, and grew until he became very great. So looking at this spiritually, how do we sow? What is it that we sow? What is it that's sown in us? Because even as we see in Genesis chapter 1, that there was a separation between light and darkness from the beginning. And we see this in the text, that there's a separation between light and darkness, and we are children of the light. And then the fruit in Genesis 1, they bore fruit after their kind. And we're made in the image of Elohim, in his image, after his likeness, or after his kind. So what is this fruit that we should bear? The fruit that we should bear in our lives should be after his kind, because we're made like unto him. Genesis 1:26, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, okay? And let them have dominion. So we are men, and we should be men having dominion in our lives, men ruling in our lives, okay? Ruling in our lives, men ruling, men having dominion, made after his image, or as the fruit in Genesis 1 said, after their kind. So we should be after his kind, his character. Let's look at some verses. Let's look at some verses. Let's firstly go to the book of Luke. The book of Luke, chapter 8. Turn right to it. I think I turned right to it, didn't I? Yeah, I turned right to it almost. The book of Luke, chapter 8. So starting in verse 4, it says, And when much people were gathered together, and they were come to him out of every city, he spake by a parable. A sower went out to sow his seed. And as he sowed, some fell by the wayside, and it was trodden down, and the fowls of the air devoured it. And some fell upon a rock, and as soon as it was sprung up, it withered away, because it lacked moisture. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprang up with it and choked it. And other fell on good ground and sprang up and bare fruit an 100-fold. We see that same word mentioned in Genesis 26. And when he had said these things, he cried, He that had ears to hear, let him hear, or Shema. And his disciples asked him, saying, What might this parable be? And he said, Unto you it is given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of Elohim, but unto others in parables, that seeing they may not see, and hearing they may not understand. Verse 11 is the key. He says, Now the parable is this: the seed is the word of Elohim. Okay, so the seed is the word of Elohim. So when the seed is placed within us, it causes us to be fruitful. As it says in that Genesis 26, verse 12, Then Isaac sowed in the land and received the same year 100-fold, and Yah blessed him. And the man waxed great and went forward and grew until he became very great. So how do we grow in our walk with the Father? Verse 11, Luke chapter 8. Now the parable is this: the seed is the word of Elohim. Now in verse 12 it says, Those by the wayside are they that hear. Then cometh the devil and taketh away the word out of their hearts, lest they should believe and be saved. Verse 13, They on the rock are they which, when they hear, receive the word with joy, and these have no root, which for a while believe, and in time of temptation fall away. Verse 14, And that which fell among thorns are they which, when they have heard, go forth, and are choked with cares and riches and pleasures of this life, and bring no fruit to perfection. Verse 15 is where we all need to be. Verse 15 says, But that on the good ground are they which in an honest and a good heart have heard the word, keep it, and bring forth fruit with patience. So it says on the good ground in verse 14, But that on the good ground are they which in an honest and good heart, having heard the word, keep it, and bring forth fruit with patience. As James says, Be not hearers of the word only, deceiving yourselves, but be doers of the word. Be doers of the word. So when we do the word, we are changed into his image from glory to glory. Verse 15 again, But that on the good ground are they which in an honest and good heart, having heard the word, keep it or do it, and bring forth fruit with patience. So that's how we can be fruitful. And as it says, and Isaac sowed in that land. So how do we sow into our land? Or even as Adam was given that charge in Genesis 3 to guard the garden. What was said to him? Let's look at that real fast. Guard his home. How do we guard what Yah has given us? How do we guard this vineyard, as it were, of our lives? Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 2, I'm sorry. Genesis chapter 2. It says in Genesis chapter 2, verse 15, And Yah Elohim took the man and put him into the garden of Eden, and to dress it and to keep it. So how are we to guard our garden? How are we to guard our lives, that we may be fruitful? It says he dressed it and he keeps it. To keep it means, in the Hebrew, it means to shamar. So it means to guard or to protect. So he put him in this garden. I want you to protect it. I want you to keep it. I want you to preserve it. I want you to keep the life of this garden. And we know when he got put out, the angels right there was guarding the garden to keep the way of the tree of life. The way of the tree of life. So how can we keep our way? How can we guard and protect our lives? How can we be fruitful? And Luke said it best. He said, Those who hear the word, do it. They're the ones who bring forth fruit by hearing the word and do it. And we bring forth fruit with patience. We bring it forth with patience. We grow. As it says in Genesis 26, verse 13, and the man waxed great and went forward and grew until he became very great. Okay, so now let's look at some other verses. Let's look at some other verses about fruitfulness. How can we be fruitful? What does that look like? What does that look like to be fruitful? Or when the Spirit's work is in our life. Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 and 23 is what it looks like when the Spirit or the Ruach is moving in a man's life. So it says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law, or basically saying the law is in concert with these attributes. Okay, so it's the love, the joy, the peace, the long-suffering, the gentleness, the goodness, the faith, and the meekness and temperance. That's what it looks like when the Spirit is moving in our lives. That's a fruitful look. And mind you, that's the work of the Spirit in our lives. So we have to always be willing to shema, always be willing to hear His leading. But in Colossians chapter 1, verse 9 and 10 is another verse. It says, for this cause we also, since the day we heard it, do not cease to pray for you and desire that ye might be filled with the knowledge of His will in all wisdom and spiritual understanding. Verse 10, that ye might walk worthy of the Master unto all pleasing, being fruitful in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of Elohim. It's interesting in both these verses, 9 and 10, that it speaks of being filled with the knowledge of His will and all wisdom and spiritual understanding, and that we should walk worthy of the Master unto all pleasing, being fruitful in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of Elohim. So we should always be increasing in the knowledge of Elohim, increasing in His word, knowledge and wisdom and understanding according to the text. As it says in Timothy, to study to show yourself approved unto Elohim. So when we're studying, I'm not studying to show myself approved to you. You shouldn't study to show yourself approved to me. We shouldn't be studying to one up this man or one up this person. Like, I know more than you and I know more than you. Because if we be honest with ourselves, as Paul said, we know not what we ought to know. The more we do increase in knowledge, it just basically expounds the scriptures. Like, I don't know anything. The more that we do learn, it's like Yah opens our mind, and it's like, man, we're rising up in knowledge, and then Yah gives us more wisdom, and it's like we come right back down, and we're constantly growing in more knowledge because He opens up more of the word to us. It's like reading something and seeing something else that you read maybe a year ago, and you didn't see it, not being nothing different or not a doctrine or a teaching that's off, but He opens up our minds more to the same text, okay? So even in verse 9 and 10, as it says, that ye might be filled with the knowledge of His will and all wisdom and spiritual understanding, that ye might walk worthy of the Master, or of the Adon, the Lord, unto all pleasing, being fruitful in every good work, and increasing in the knowledge of Elohim, increasing in the knowledge of Him, being filled with all wisdom according to His will and in His will. All right? And to close off, we'll read verse 13 in Genesis 26, when it says, and the man waxed great and went forward and grew until he became very great. There's a perfect example of this. So it says the man waxed great, and then it says he went forward. So what does that imply to us? So we wax great and we still go forward into grace and more grace into grace. But it's a verse in 2 Peter that explains this perfectly. The man waxed great and he went forward and became very great. The scripture says he waxed great, he went forward, and he became very great. In 2 Peter, and this is all in the context of having a fruitful life. As it said, he sowed and he became fruitful, and he bare fruit 100-fold in Genesis 26. But if we look at 2 Peter chapter 2, 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 2, it says, grace and peace be multiplied unto you through the knowledge of Elohim and of Yeshua, our Master, according as his divine power has given unto us all things that pertain to life and godliness through the knowledge of him that hath called us to glory and virtue, whereby are given unto us exceeding great and precious promises, that by these ye might be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. Watch this, verse 5. And besides this, giving all diligence, add to your faith. Okay, add to your faith. We saw in Genesis 26 that he was a fruitful man. We saw it said, verse 12, Isaac sowed in the land and received the same year 100-fold. We linked that with one of the parables the Messiah talked about bearing fruit, some 30, some 60, some 100-fold. And Yah blessed them. Then verse 13 in Genesis 26, and the man waxed great and he went forward and grew until he became very great. So how can we grow until we become very great? In this 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 5, it says, and besides this, giving all diligence, add to your faith, or grow exceedingly. Add to your faith virtue, and to virtue knowledge, and to knowledge temperance, and to temperance patience, and to patience godliness, and to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness charity. For if these things be in you and abound, they make you that you should neither be barren nor unfruitful in the knowledge of our Master, Yeshua HaMashiach, or Jesus Christ, Yahushua. So it says, by doing these things, by adding to our faith, the virtue and the knowledge, the temperance and the patience and the godliness and the brotherly kindness and the charity, that we won't be unfruitful in the knowledge of the Messiah, because this is how he is. He had the most fruitful life. That's what it looks like. That's what the law looks like embodied. The Torah of Yah. That's what it looks like embodied when a man is walking in the perfect will of the Father, walking it out perfectly. The righteousness, the purity, the holiness, the love, the mercy, the justice, the equity, all these beautiful attributes that the Messiah walked out was a fruitful life because he was walking in the Father's ways. Okay, so that's what it means, and that's what it looks like to grow in our faith. Or as it said, or as it said about Isaac, that he grew and he waxed great. He waxed great, he grew. That's what it looks like when we grow. We add to our faith these beautiful attributes. You know, we can look at some of these things and see where can I grow at? Where can I grow in temperance or self-control? Where can I grow in patience? You know, me coming into, not even just coming into this walk, I've never been a patient guy. I haven't just told my testimony like that, but I used to be a drug dealer. I guess you can say a drug dealer is what I used to be. So I'm used to having everything when I wanted it, large amounts of money, just various things when I wanted it. I'm not used to being a patient guy. Whenever I wanted something, I went to go get it. Or whenever I didn't have it, I would get it, and it was easy for me to get because I had the funds or the resources to get it. Okay, so when I came to Yah, he took all of that away. He stripped me from all of that. Praise Yah for that. He stripped me for all of that, but I have always struggled with patience, you know, and being with him. And when he wants to grow us, strengthen us, use us, you have to be patient. You have to be patient. We don't get everything that we want all the time. The very second that you want it, you have to wait on Yah. You have to wait on Yah. He told me a verse. He spoke to me a verse so many times. In Psalm 27, verse 14, it says, wait on Yah, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on Yah. So that just bringing you into my life real briefly, that patience, that's one thing that I've always had to rely on him for. Rely on him, trust in him, and being patient, not going my own way, not going and trying to make something. If I know he's telling me he's going to do something for me, then I can just wait on him. That's humility as well. That's being humble. That's being submissive to Yah. As we know, his people are supposed to be servants. We're called to be a light, and we're called to be servants of him. So any of these attributes that you can see that you may need to add to your faith, or to grow more in, the temperance or the self-control, the patience, the godliness, the brotherly kindness, how we're treating one another, charity, which is love, brotherly kindness. How do we treat our brothers? How do we treat the strangers? How do we treat those outside of faith in the Messiah? because it says to do good to the brethren and to the strangers in 3 John. And it says, as we have opportunity to do good to all men, especially the brethren. So how are we treating the brothers in the faith? How do we treat our brothers? As we know, we're his temple. The scripture says, what know you not? That you are YAH'S temple, and the spirit of Elohim dwells in you. So, of course, we wouldn't defile YAH'S temple if we could go walk into a physical temple, but we should always look at one another as we're YAH'S temple. I'm YAH'S temple. You're YAH'S temple. So how do I treat the temple of Yah? How do I treat the temple of Yah? We should look at it that way. We should view it that way, that we may have this unity among one another, this brotherly kindness among one another, as it says right here, in this charity, which is the fulfilling of the Torah, or the fulfilling of the law, loving Yah with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength, and loving our neighbor as ourselves. So I pray this study blessed you, and I'm going to close off with that Genesis 26, as we just looked at all these points that we should grow in our faith, adding to it the virtue, knowledge, patience, temperance, godliness, all these things. Just closing off with the verse that we expounded on in Genesis 26, 12 and 13. Then Isaac sowed in that land and received the same year 100-fold. And Yah blessed him, and the man waxed great and went forward and grew until he became very great. So I pray that you add to your faith, that we add to our faith, that we wax great, and that we continue to go forward with our eyes on the prize, and that we may bear fruit 100-fold. I love you. I hope you have a wonderful day and have a blessed day. Shalom.